15.
Well, hello everyone. We enjoying this evening? I'm having a great time. I just forgot that I was supposed to be getting up on stage and talking to you. Anyway, my name is Martine Wright, and I'm proud to say that I'm captain, actually, of the Great Britain sitting volleyball team. And I did have the huge honour of taking part in the London Paralympics. Hopefully you guys have got lots of memories from that time. A dream that I was working towards over sort of 8 years, but before that time, that wasn't my dream. And as it's already mentioned, 12 years ago, can't quite believe it's 12 years ago, although I can quite believe it's 12 years ago because of recent events. It just keeps happening again and again. But 12 years ago, I was on the way to work as an international marketing manager, and I stepped on a Circle Line tube, and it changed my life forever. I was sat just 4 foot away from one of the suicide bombers that decided to hit London that morning. My family, this is something I still can't comprehend, especially being a mother now, my family searched for me for 2 days. They had no idea where I was, and they finally found me at the Royal London Hospital, completely unrecognisable. I had lost both my legs above the knee. Apparently, I'd lost 80% of my blood. I'd been resuscitated several times and was in a deep coma. And 7 days later, I came out of this coma to look down in the bed and see that my legs were gone. I can't really describe to you how I felt at that moment, but I pretty much felt like my world had ended. I just couldn't believe that out of the millions of people that travel in London every morning, I was the most injured survivor. I often thought back then I'd probably have more chance of winning the lottery than sitting where I was sitting that day. But my brilliant family and the brilliant NHS staff kept reassuring me, kept saying, "You're going to be okay, Martine. You're going to get new legs. You're going to get new legs." At that point, all I kept saying was, "But I've got no legs. My life is over. It's over." And I'm sure that there's people here today, here this evening, that have either been through something equally traumatic, or you know of someone that might have been through something equally traumatic. And I'm sure there's one thing that they would tell you, that there was a big turning point that they were faced with. My turning point came on a day when actually I was supposed to be chief bridesmaid to my best friend, Alex, just round the corner from here, actually. But instead, I was strong enough for the first time. It was about 6 weeks after it all happened, and I was strong enough to go to the physio for the first time at the hospital. And I walked into a room to see all manner of different people. I saw a girl who's one of my very good friends now. Her name's Jeanette. And she'd lost both her legs, but she'd also lost both her arms through meningitis. I met other victims of the bombings who might not have been as physically injured as me, but psychologically they were completely traumatized. And this was the day that I found out how many people died that day. 52 people, innocent people, on the way to work, had been minding their own business, had been killed, and I had no idea at all before this point. So I think this was my turning point, and I look back now and I think this was the day that I pretty much said to myself, Martine, pull yourself together. You have 2 choices. Either you can sit there and you can feel sorry for yourself and keep asking that question. That question is obviously, why me? Why me? And decide never to walk again, or decide that life carries on. And yes, it was an awful thing that happened, worse than anything I could have ever imagined. But there are always people worse off than you. The main thing is I didn't die that day. I was a lucky one. And I had a choice. I had a choice to live my life, whatever it may hold. So that's when I decided, right, I am going to learn to walk again. And I again was lucky enough to go off to the Douglas Bardi unit at Queen Mary's Hospital, where I started to learn to walk. As you can see from my facial expression, I'm not saying it was the easiest thing in the world. It's probably the hardest thing I ever had to do. But I did persevere, and I spent a whole year in hospital. And after a year, I got these. my C legs. C stands for computerised, not C as in water. I thought I might put them on and start performing miracles, of walking across water. But yeah, I spent a whole year in hospital, and it was time for me to leave to go back to normal life, but obviously not normal as I knew it. Not being able to live in my flat in London, having to move into my mum's, and I think this, out of all of it, was the hardest time at all. And again, I remember this one day when I was at my mum's house, and my older sister, come to me, and there was one day where I just couldn't stop crying. Well, there are lots of days where I couldn't stop crying, but I remember this one day. And my sister came to me and she said, "What's wrong, Martine?" And all I kept saying over and over again is, all I want to do is walk out this house and go home. All I want to do is walk out this house and go home. And for me, the hardest thing to deal with out of all of it was the memories of how I used to do things before. One day you're one person, and the next day you find out that you're someone else. And I suppose the thing about change, all of us know, it is really hard to handle. And we can plan for some change, but obviously there's some change we cannot plan for. So I suppose I believe that we all need some ways of coping with this change. And I'm going to share with you my ways of coping that I've used over the last 12 years. And sitting here now, I don't think I'd be sitting here now if it wasn't for this power. I've called it power of something. Now, I decide to embrace, to say, right, number seven, even though I got blown up on 7-7, number 7 could be my lucky number. And maybe, just maybe, if I embraced it and made it mine, that maybe it would bring amazing things to my life. So that's pretty much what it is, and I embraced number 7. So I've come up with this power of 7, and this is, as I said, ways of thinking that I've used over the last 12 years. The first one of these, I've mentioned already, is choice. Something happens in our life, we have choices to make. We have 2 choices to make, so that's number 1. Number 2 is, I suppose, don't be scared of grabbing opportunities with both hands. I suppose in order for me to find the strength and the resilience of the change that I found had happened to me, I knew I had to go off and grab every opportunity. And I knew I had to do something as a result of losing my legs. I suppose otherwise, to me, it would have all been a completely waste of time. So literally, and it was literally about 6 weeks after this, I turned around to my mum and dad and said that I was going off to fly planes in South Africa. As you can imagine, quite a shock for my mum and dad. They'd spent, a year. I'd spent a year in hospital, wrapped me up in cotton wool, and suddenly I was going, "Mum, I'm off to fly planes." She was like that. But my husband Nick, who was my boyfriend at the time, he looked really worried about the prospect of me flying a plane. Although I've got no idea why. Although I do look at this photo, and he might have been right, because I'm sure I'm supposed to be facing forward whilst flying a plane, instead of smiling into the camera. But again, I came back from there and grabbed another opportunity to ski again, absolutely brilliant. But again, came back from there, and I imagine there's loads of you in this room that have done this. And that isn't to fly a plane, but obviously to jump out of a plane. And actually, I did something that I was very, very proud of, went up 10,000 foot, but this man here, he experienced something for the first time on that day, and that was my family actually said they heard me before I appeared through the clouds. And he'd said he'd never had that done before, so I was kind of proud of that. But again, a huge honour was being given the Helen Rollason Award at Sports Personality, and one of my absolute highlights was to take part in Strictly Sport Relief, and to actually, learn to dance again was a big thing for me, but to be swung around by the lovely Ian Waite wasn't too bad either. Now, I'm not trying to say, look at me. What I'm trying to say is, I suppose we all know bad things do sometimes happen. We all know bad things do sometimes happen. And what I've learned over the past 12 years is that good can come out of bad. And all these things I've done, I would never have done if it weren't for going through that awful time of my life. So I suppose that's as I said, my number 2, maximising every opportunity. Number 3 of my power of change is not being scared of change. I think all of us, we could all put our hands up saying that we are scared of change. But what we need to do is we need to realise it brings opportunities, it stretches us and challenges us. And that's pretty much what it did for me. And I was suddenly in this place where I had to discover who I was. And all I knew is that I missed the drive and ambition that I used to feel at work. So I was invited to go along to a Paralympic Potential Day and pretty much tried every single sport, but fell in love with sitting volleyball. And as you can see, I'm there with number 7 on the front of my shirts. That was a funny day. First ever GB women's team. We were waiting for the kit to arrive, hadn't really had a conversation about numbers. We were all sat around, this round table. And we all had to put our stories, our cases forward of why we wanted a certain number. Number 7's quite a popular number, isn't it? So we had people sort of going, well, I want number 7 because it's my birthday. It was like, okay, yeah, I suppose so. I want number 7 because I quite like David Beckham and Ronaldo. Okay, right. And I sort of said, well, I want number 7 because I got blown up that day. And they went, no, take it. You've got it, hands down. And what I love about sitting volleyball is people think we play in a wheelchair. We don't. We move constantly around on the floor on our bums. It was actually first called bum ball. Quite an unfortunate name, I believe. Thankfully, they changed it to sitting volleyball, although we're now called floor cleaners, which isn't a lot better than bum ball, really. But by the time we finish the match, the floor is absolutely gleaming. And I tell you, sport has become so important in my life, and it's healed me. It has healed me. The power of sport has healed me. On a physical, emotional, but more importantly, this is what sport's all about, is psychological level. So, for instance, physically, it's got me fit again, and I've discovered muscles in places that I never ever thought existed. Emotionally, it got me out meeting a great bunch of people that have been through something similar to me as well. And psychologically, for me, this still is the biggest, but it was the biggest, which was, giving me a goal again, giving me a new dream. And I believe it's taken me on a journey that I was always meant to make. And I suppose this definitely takes me on to my number 4 of my power of 7. And that is the importance of a team. Teamwork, whether that's in your personal life, whether that's in your work life. And I'm not sure whether you can see from this photo, but we were a squad of very, very different people, different ages, from 13 years to 43 years old. I wasn't the eldest, by the way. I wasn't the youngest either. But, we're all different, aren't we? That's what's amazing about human beings, is that we were all completely different. But it actually, we had to find a way of communicating. We had to find a way of agreeing to what our goals were and what our values were. And we did. It took a hell of a long time, but I'm proud to say that we did that, and we had a fantastic, and we still have a fantastic way of communicating. And I'm not saying our journey to London was easy. It was really, really bloody hard. We were working 35 hours a week, not being paid for it, didn't have the love of the sport, because I've chosen a sport where, we don't get paid for it. And there is a saying within the Olympic and Paralympic world, which is, I've got talent, where's my tracksuit? Well, we all know that life doesn't work like that. And I think every single one of us here realises how life can get so hectic and fitting it all in. And I definitely had those days before London where I just wanted to throw the towel in, wanted to go, no more. And on those days, I used a very simple coping mechanism to get me through that awful day that I was feeling that I wanted to give up. And it was an image of my son, Oscar. And I knew he was going to be 3. And I placed him in an image in my head at the Paralympics, in the crowds, and I had an image of him holding up a banner. No idea what this banner was going to say on it. But just, that image really got me through those days, gave me that coping mechanism to be able to carry on. And we did carry on. Literally blood, sweat and tears. And then we were suddenly in. It came around so quick. And hopefully, as I said, you guys, hopefully you've got brilliant memories of that time. I think London did a fantastic job. I have so many amazing memories from that time. But there is one memory that will always stick out, rather than in my heart, really, rather than my head. And that was the opening ceremony of the Paralympics. Because this really reminded me of my power of, well, my 0.6 of my power of 7. And that is called Team Me. This is something that I completely made up. But Team Me. Team Me, we all have a Team Me, and we're part of someone else's Team Me. I'm sure some of your Team Me are here tonight. So my Team Me is made up of my family and my friends, my teammates, all those, people that put me back together again, all those healthcare professionals that gave me the time, the patience, taught me to walk, all those people. So when I was walking around in front of 80,000 people, going absolutely bonkers, I was doing it for me, but doing it for them as well, and I suppose doing it for anyone that's been through adversity in their life and got over it. And here's my Team Me there. And look, there on the right-hand side. I remember that morning. That's the banner that I had in my head, the picture that I had in my head, and that's my son. On my husband's head, that's not a strange man. I just think, who's that? Oh, it's my husband with a beard. And, saying, go, mummy, go. And that was a brilliant morning. That was the first ever Paralympic game we'd ever played. And I will share this with you. The top left photo, you can't actually see my dad through the size of his banner. He's got a grey waistcoat on. And I had friends saying to me after the first game, oh, we really enjoyed that, Martine. It was brilliant. But I went, oh, that's great. And they went, yeah, but we've made the mistake of sitting behind your family. And I was like, oh, no, what? Were they really loud? It's like, no, just couldn't see anything through the size of your dad's banner. And then I did think, where the hell has he got this banner from? It's huge. Where has he got it from? And halfway through the game, I think, in all the excitement, my dad got slightly confused and my stepmom was the other end. Obviously got slightly confused with all the excitement, and it turned over and I glanced up and all I saw was Slimmer's World, first week free. He'd obviously nicked it from somewhere or borrowed it. I was going to ring up Slimmer's World and say, can we have a little cut on how many subscribers you've had? But no, that was brilliant. And I suppose this whole picture, these whole pictures remind me of my seventh and most important power of 7, and that is belief. I'm not saying the last 12 years have been easy. It definitely has been a roller coaster of a ride. From days when we thought, what world have we been propelled into, to days now when things are quite normal, really, quite normal, I say. And I suppose I've shared with you good things that have happened to me, but there's been good things that have happened to my friends and my family, my Team Me. So, for instance, my husband realised life was too short as a result of what happened, and he followed his dream of teaching photography. My family, we discovered a strength, a deep, deep strength and understanding that we would never have found if it weren't for going through that traumatic time. And my nephew, he couldn't believe his luck when I took him to Legoland and he realised he didn't have to queue up for any of the rides because I'm in a wheelchair. So, it's really not all that bad. And, I've said this all the way through. I truly believe that I was meant to make this journey. There are too many coincidences that relate to the Paralympics and the Olympics and the 7th of July tube bombings. Hopefully you will remember the 6th of July. And that was the day that we all found out that London had won the Olympic and Paralympic bid. I went out with work colleagues and with friends that night, and that was the whole reason why I was late that morning on the 7th of July. And I remember getting my paper that morning and sitting down on that seat in that tube and reading my paper. And obviously you couldn't turn a page without reading something on the Olympics and Paralympics. And literally seconds before the explosion happened, I remember looking at my paper and thinking, I'm a Londoner. I've got to get tickets to this. I'm a Londoner. And what could be seen as a weird twist of fate now, I didn't go as a spectator. I didn't go as a spectator 5 years, 6 years, but 7 years later, that's 7 again, 7 years later, I was taking part in the Paralympics. Some people say things happen for a reason, and I can only believe that that is true. So I suppose we all either believe that we don't have a path that's mapped out for us, or maybe that we do have a path that's mapped out for us, a fate that we can, never change. We could argue this all night, and we're never going to know. But what is important is it's not really the fate that's important, it's the journey that's important. And someone once said, it's not what happens to you that makes the difference. It's what you do with what happens to you that makes the difference. And life changes, doesn't it? Things happen in our life, good and bad. And we need to accept those changes and move forward from it. So I suppose my question to you is, have you got a power of 7? You can't have 7 because that's my number, so hands off. And I suppose, ask yourself, are you on your journey? What part of your journey? We all have different journeys, I believe, in life. So please make today the day you choose to maybe, sit around these tables and talk about things that you might never have spoken about. Maybe view the world in a way that you might not have viewed it before. And please, please, if there's one thing from this presentation, please believe, and hopefully I'm testament to this, but please, please believe that anything is possible as long as you believe. Thank you ever so much.